When you and the narcissist both go silent, what really happens? When you and the narcissist both stop contacting each other, it feels unnatural at first, almost eerie. There's no closure, no dramatic ending, no final conversation to explain what happened. Just silence. And that silence doesn't feel peaceful right away. It feels heavy, confusing, even threatening. Because if you've been involved with a narcissist, you were conditioned to believe that silence means danger, punishment, or abandonment. Your nervous system learned that when communication stops, something bad is about to happen. So at first, your mind races. You replay conversations. You wonder who's winning. You ask yourself if this silence means you've been forgotten, or worse, replaced. But here's the truth most people don't tell you. When both you and the narcissist stop contacting each other, the real psychological shift doesn't happen on the surface. It happens underneath. And what happens next doesn't shock you because it's dramatic. It shocks you because it's revealing. In the beginning, the narcissist interprets the silence very differently than you do. You're feeling the loss of attachment, the withdrawal from emotional intensity, the emptiness where chaos used to live. But the narcissist isn't feeling lost the same way. They don't miss you. They miss the regulation you provided, the validation, the emotional reactions, the reassurance of control. So when you stop reaching out and they stop too, it creates a strange internal contradiction for them. On one hand, their ego tells them, I'm superior. I don't need anyone. On the other hand, their nervous system is unsettled because supply has stopped flowing. And this is where the silence becomes dangerous. Not for you, but for the illusion they rely on to feel whole. What shocks most people is that the narcissist often doesn't reach out right away. Not because they don't care, but because they're watching. Testing. Waiting to see if you'll break first. Narcissists are deeply strategic when it comes to attention. If they contact you too soon, they risk appearing needy. If they stay silent, they maintain the fantasy of power. So they wait. And during that waiting period, something uncomfortable happens inside them. Without your reactions, they lose feedback. Without conflict or admiration, they feel flat, empty, irritable. This is why many narcissists suddenly become hyperactive elsewhere, posting more, flirting more, picking fights with new people, or reviving old connections. They are trying to replace the emotional stimulation you once provided, because silence forces them to face something they avoid at all costs: themselves. Meanwhile, something entirely different is happening to you. At first, your body is in withdrawal. The push-pull dynamic created a trauma bond, and trauma bonds don't break quietly. You might feel restless, lonely, even tempted to reach out just to check. But if you stay in the silence long enough, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. The constant adrenaline fades, the emotional whiplash slows down, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, your clarity returns. This is one of the most shocking parts of mutual silence. You start to think more clearly without trying. You begin to see patterns you couldn't see while you were inside the chaos. You realize how much emotional labor you were doing, how often you were explaining yourself, how rarely you felt safe being fully human. And once you see that, something shifts permanently. Here's what most people don't expect. Mutual no contact is not neutral to a narcissist. It feels like rejection, even if they initiated distance first. Narcissists can discard, but they struggle deeply with being irrelevant. When neither of you reaches out, they lose their mirror. They can't confirm whether they still matter to you, and that uncertainty slowly eats at them. This is why many narcissists eventually reappear, not with apologies, but with bait. A casual message, a vague check-in, a memory, something designed to test whether they still have access to you. And the shock comes when you realize this. The silence didn't make them reflect, it exposed them. If you stay silent long enough, the power dynamic flips. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're no longer participating in one. Narcissists thrive on emotional engagement, whether positive or negative. Love and anger both feed them. Silence starves them. And while you're using the quiet to heal, they're using it to search for stimulation. This is why many narcissists escalate after prolonged silence, becoming more dramatic, more charming, or more hostile if they re-enter your orbit. The silence didn't calm them, it destabilized them. Because for the first time, they are not the center of the emotional universe they once controlled. What shocks people most is realizing that mutual silence doesn't create distance. It creates truth. Without constant interaction, you stop idealizing, you stop minimizing, you stop explaining away behavior that never made sense. You recognize how conditional the connection really was, how love was offered only when you complied, how warmth disappeared the moment you asserted boundaries. And once that realization lands, something irreversible happens. The narcissist loses their psychological grip on you. Not because they changed, but because you did. And here's the part no one prepares you for. When the silence stretches on, you don't just detach from the narcissist, you detach from the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserved. You begin to feel unfamiliar in a good way, calmer, more grounded, less reactive. You stop scanning your phone, you stop rehearsing conversations in your head, and one day you realize something that truly shocks you. You don't miss them anymore. You miss who you thought they were. You miss the potential, the fantasy, the intermittent kindness. But you don't miss the anxiety, the confusion, the self-doubt. And that's when the silence stops feeling empty and starts feeling like freedom. If the narcissist never reaches out again, that silence becomes confirmation. Not of your worthlessness, but of how little depth the connection actually had. And if they do reach out, you'll notice something else that shocks you. Their presence no longer has the same effect. The hooks don't sink in as easily. The words feel familiar, even scripted. And you see clearly now, this wasn't love, it was leverage. So if you and the narcissist are both silent right now, understand this. Something is happening, even if it doesn't look like it. The silence is working on both of you, but only one of you is becoming free because of it. And once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. Not because you're stronger, not because you won, but because you finally stopped feeding what was draining you. And that's the kind of ending that doesn't need closure. It creates peace. If this silence feels uncomfortable right now, understand something important. It's not because you're losing them. It's because you're finding yourself again. When you stop chasing clarity from someone who thrived on confusion, your nervous system finally gets space to heal. You don't need closure from a narcissist to move forward. The distance is the closure. If this message helped you feel seen or understood, support the channel by liking the video,